It's August the 15th, 2020, and God's New Testament word for us today is Matthew chapter 17. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I'll put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, "Don't tell anyone what you've seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The disciples asked him, "Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. "Lord, have mercy on my son," he said. "He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." "O unbelieving and perverse generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed from that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "Because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth, if you've faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." When they came together in Galilee, he said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the 3rd day he'll be raised to life." And the disciples were filled with grief. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the sons are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." Amen. Now, I think it's true to say that life is all about relationships. And this chapter gives us some tremendous insights into Jesus through his relationships in 3 ways. First of all, his relationship with God, verses 1 to 13. This tells us that while Jesus is a real man, of course, He is not a mere man. He is, as the Father in heaven says, verse 5, he is my Son. And in the Transfiguration, we see the glory of Jesus as the eternal Son of the eternal Father shining through his relationship with God. But then coming down from the mountain, and verses 14 to 23, we see secondly Jesus's relationship with a broken and fallen world in the grip of evil. That is personalized in the pathetic, tragic example of the demon-possessed boy. The disciples, who were mere men, even though they were followers of Jesus, at this point they can be seen as just mere men. They could not drive out that demon. And that's what the Father says about them. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. By contrast, Jesus, the anointed King, can do that with a word and in a moment. Verse 18. Jesus is the answer to the brokenness, the fallenness, and the evil that is in this world and that is in all of our hearts. And the ultimate answer to that evil, he goes on to say in verse 23, the problem is so great, the wickedness is so beyond any human forces to solve and to find a remedy for. It will take nothing less than the death and the resurrection of Jesus to deal with that grip of evil, to set people free. That's what he's talking about in verse 23. But then finally, and on a very different level, rather strangely you might even think, verses 24 to 26, we see Jesus's relationship with civil society, the whole business of paying tax. Now, the implication is, particularly in the light of all that we've seen thus far about Jesus, he who is the glorious Son, we might think, and people maybe had this idea, that Jesus was sort of on a different plane, a heavenly plane, and he wasn't interested in society. And if anybody should be exempt, therefore, from paying their taxes, it would be this man. But he doesn't think like that. And as we see by the end of that little section, he does. He does pay his taxes. So these are three relationships that Jesus has, which give us an insight into him, but also point us in the direction of how we should relate to him. Number one, the transfiguration. Jesus, who is now, in a sense, transfigured, glorified in heaven. We should bow before him and adore his glory. Then secondly, the cross as the only answer, the only remedy for evil. We should receive that remedy. We shouldn't be doubting. We shouldn't be faithless. We should have that faith that Jesus speaks of in the crucified and exalted Lord himself. And number three, paying taxes. Yes, if we follow him, if we submit to him, we should be concerned to be model citizens in the society where God has put us. That will mean many things. And at the most basic level, it will mean pay your taxes.